Hi, welcome to the November 30th meeting of the CNCF IoT Edge Working Group. On the agenda today, we've got a few items. We're going to, one of the speakers is running a little late, so we're going to invert the order compared to what's in the agenda notes doc. We're going to start with a presentation on the Drogue IoT Cloud by Dejan, followed by a follow-up discussion of the Edge native applications white paper that we've been working on since mid-year, maybe even a little before mid-year. And then finally, I don't know that we need to discuss this, but I put an item in the agenda notes doc for consideration of whether we want to cancel a few meetings that occur during holiday periods around the world, specifically late December and in late January. There's one that conflicts with the Asian Lunar New Year celebrations. So go ahead and respond to that poll if you care to. So with that said, let's turn it over to you, Dejan, and you can talk about the Drogue IoT Cloud.
Great, thanks. Let me just, what is this? Oh, why can't I share the screen? Give me just a second to see what's going on. I will probably need to rejoin. Sorry about this. I got new laptop recently and I obviously didn't share. Give me just a second to rejoin.
Okay, got it. Anybody else seen anything interesting while we wait? I know there's usually some interesting IoT things that happen at reInvent, but I haven't had a chance to watch so far this week.
I'm back. Steve, can you make me co-host again?
Yeah.
Just to give it a try.
Done.
That's much better. Sorry for the hiccup. Can everybody
Okay, we can see that.
Yeah, perfect. So I don't want to get too long with this, and it's not even, I think, a completely new topic for this group, because I think we used Drogue IoT a little bit in one of our presentations, Steve, for the KubeCon. But having a light agenda, I was thinking it might be good to like go briefly to what Drogue is, maybe 15-20 minutes. And then if there's an interest, I'm more than willing in the future to do more demos and things like that about what we are doing in the space. And let's make this as interactive as possible. So if anybody have any questions, we can talk about as we go. So the whole Drogue IoT project is consisting of the two parts. The first one is the Drogue device, and it's an attempt to help the Rust embedded community a little bit, try to provide more libraries and building blocks for building IoT applications in Rust. And complementary to that, we wanted to provide the same community with IoT-friendly APIs and cloud services for IoT. But from the beginning, let's just make it clear that it's not only related to the Rust embedded devices. The Drogue Cloud is available to any device technology, as we will see. As for the Edge, because this is also important topic for this group. We don't plan to provide any kind of infrastructure for the Edge. What we're focusing on is to provide the workloads for some IoT use cases when necessary, like having gateways for protocols that are not IP enabled and things like that. and try to provide the best practices on how to run these workloads on the existing edge infrastructures and things like that. And that's something that was my idea, is that maybe in the future we could do something in this area, basically trying to put the best practices that we outlined in the white paper in some kind of a working blueprint, where we will like eat our dog food, so to say, and provide an example of how to actually, write and run and manage the edge workload. But we can talk about it at some other point. So let's talk about the cloud bits next. So the idea is to provide the whole infrastructure to connect on one side the embedded devices, and on the other side the IoT applications running in the cloud. And in order to do that, we need to provide a little bit of infrastructure there. So this is nothing particularly new, but I think it's important to do these kind of things, because what we see is that usually people are creating their own silos over and over again, reinventing things, getting from the idea that it's a very easy thing to do. So I need a MQTT broker, and it will be it will all work out. But then things get complicated, and you're putting more and more work into providing infrastructure instead of focusing on your applications and things like that. So there are two questions. Why just don't we use the regular cloud stuff? And the answer for that is that it's usually not suitable for connecting devices the same way as we connect other applications, and that we need to cater more toward the IoT developers in that area. And for other way around, as I said, like, why don't we just use a typical MQTT broker? Is that it's the other way around. We want to cater also for the cloud developers that are not that accustomed to doing devices. So there are two things. Again, saying this is nothing too new. Two basic communication patterns between devices and applications. We have a telemetry sending usually from the sensors and devices to the applications, and the commands going the other way around. And they are two directions, but they're also two completely different patterns of communication. Having telemetry in a much larger volume going upstream, and then the commands are much smaller, but usually one-to-one communication pattern between the applications and devices. So the center of the architecture is Apache Kafka, used for telemetry. But in order to use it properly, we need to have an endpoints, the points that devices will be connecting to. So at this moment, we provide devices connecting through MQTT, HTTP, and COAP. But in order to these devices to securely connect to the cloud platform, we need a device registry. Basically, a registry of credentials and identities for all our devices. On the other side, we want to provide a cloud-friendly APIs for communicating communicating with the platform, and usually people can consume directly from Kafka, use the HTTP endpoint to send commands back, use WebSockets, or because we are talking about, again, IoT developers, providing the MQTT, again, API on the cloud side as well. And here we also need to have a security layer, but at this point, a completely different security layer than what devices will be using. And this is an SSO system based on the Keycloak project that will allow us to manage our users, their credentials and tokens for accessing these APIs. And then, controlling all this, we need to have a management API so that we can manage devices and the users, and on top of that, having the appropriate CLI and the console that people can use to manage the platform. So, and yeah, this is in its essence event-based system, right? So devices in the cloud exchange events. So as you said, we try to normalize these protocols so that devices and the application can talk even if they don't talk the same protocol. So the protocol is normalized. And in this connectivity layer, we don't touch the payload. So the payload is not done. So what we've done is that we standardize on the cloud events as a format for events running through the system, and it allows us to achieve this and basically mix and match different protocols and having the same metadata and same feelings for the events over the different protocols. So, for example, the device can publish using MQTT, and we can consume that events using the WebSocket, but the format of the events will be always the cloud event. And what is the cloud event is just a specification that allows us to attach certain headers to our payload, right? So things like a subject, the type of the event, the type of the content, and here we can see how one cloud event could look like in the JSON format. But you can see that the same event can be represented as a HTTP request without losing any data and any metadata in the process. So here's a quick example. So we have a DRG CLI that we can use to communicate with the management API. So first thing that it's not presented here is that you need to log in using the SSO in order to be able to communicate with the system. And then if you want to create some devices, the first thing you need to do is create what we call an application, and that from the if you're coming from Kubernetes, that's basically a namespace. So a way to organize multiple devices in one logical group, and then we can create a device inside of this application, right? And then we can manage these devices and for example, set a password or our certificate for device so it can connect to the platform. And once we have device created and enabled, we can start playing with it. So in this example, we are trying to use a WebSocket integration endpoint to start listening to the events coming from devices. Here you can see that the DRG client can give us a token, a bearer token that we can use to connect to the WebSockets integration endpoint. And if on the other side we start publishing events or as a MQTT device from the other side, we should be able to see basically a cloud events coming through the WebSocket client, and it should look something like this. So that's it. I mean, it's a complete, so to say, connectivity a platform. So we can see that we have a programmatic device management. So all these things can be scripted and automated. All the system we see here and how it's relevant to this group is that it's running on Kubernetes. So all these resources like Kafka or device registry endpoints and SSO can be deployed with the Helm charts. And we saw that we can easily use different protocols and basically have different experiences for the devices connecting to the platforms and for the applications connecting from the other side. There's more to it. We also have a nice UI console where you get all the information about how to connect devices and applications using different protocols. You can manage your applications and devices there, and you can do some basic debugging, like we call it a spy tool, where you can see events and any introspect events going through a single application. There are a couple more features in this layer as well, like event preprocessing, where we allow for each of the devices to define a custom, let's call it like a serverless endpoint where events will fly through, so that they can be I don't know, enriched or formatted or preprocessed basically. We define a gateway concept for our devices, meaning that one device can act as a gateway for different logical devices. In that way, we can easily represent multiple, so to say, like a Bluetooth devices going through a single gateway, but that only gateway is actually physically connected to the cloud. And we defined a change events for the device registry, which is something that I'll mention a little bit more about. And it's a common use case in the IoT applications that basically people have multiple registries of information, so multiple device registries. So by having a change events coming out of our registry, we can easily integrate multiple device registries. For example, allowing us, when we create a device in our registry, to act on that event and do something in other registries, like synchronize things with the things network for LoRaWAN examples, or synchronize the workloads on the edge devices if needed. There are a couple of more side projects built on top of the Drogue Cloud. One is called the Drogue Azure, and it's basically our effort in providing the firmware over the air updates. And it defines the protocol between the cloud and device to do the firmware updates and work out of the box with our Drogue device Rust framework. But it's not limited to that, right? And it requires the external orchestrator like Eclipse Hogbit or even using the OSCI compatible container registry to store the firmwares. And in the works is a digital twin implementation, which tries to, as you said, like in the connectivity layer, we don't touch the payload. So this is the layer we will actually deal with the payload, and like we normalize the protocols, try to normalize the data coming in and out of the devices. Allowing us to get the basically the REST API or WebSocket API to the device, no matter how it's connected, and to provide some kind of a reconciliation of the desired values for our device properties. These additional components are basically just additional cloud applications on top of the Drogue cloud, which could run in the same Kubernetes cluster or in the different ones. And we can talk about it more in the future. So this is it. I didn't want to take too much time for it, so these are some of the useful links. There's also a link to a sandbox that we are hosting, so that it can be easily people can easily get started, log in there with your a GitHub account and test it out. And as I said, like I don't want to hijack these meetings for this topic, but whenever there's an interest and there's some free space, we can dive deeper into these topics as we move on. I see some hands raised, so
I think Kate was first.
Sure, I'll go for it. First of all, it's always great getting updates on Drogue. I feel like you all are always moving fast and adding in a more full-fledged solution, and now it kind of has everything. So it's really cool to see all the diagrams coming together. I'm curious if Drogue works with kind of brownfield devices, or if it kind of requires that you flash the Rust, like flash specific firmware that is Drogue firmware that's on top of that Rust framework, or can you do it with kind of any device? Can you plug into Drogue Cloud?
You can plug any device. So it's as example here. I need to now to find it. Let me try. Oh, never mind. So it's completely separate. So we like to provide a good support for the Rust firmware that we are supporting, but any device talking or even application talking MQTT or HTTP can connect to it. So at the moment we have like a it's not a full MQTT broker like it never is in these cloud IoT platforms, and we have a dialect now that we support. But we have an open issue to work on supporting multiple different dialects, and maybe even providing a custom dialect for, as you said, a brownfield deployments of devices that MQTT devices that are expecting already a kind of existing MQTT topic schema or something like that. So basically the idea of the cloud is to provide like a data plane between the devices and the applications, no matter the technologies used. So make sense?
So I had
Yeah,
a question. It strikes me that this looks like it's taking on a similar mission to the Eclipse Kura project, maybe in a different way. But I'm wondering if maybe it
So
even
not-
uses parts of that for all I know, but the Cura project goes from low-level devices up through gateways and feeds things up to applications using standardized protocols. Many of them seem the same, like MQTT, and I think Cura supports Kafka as well. But I'm wondering why you saw a need to do something new and what's different.
Yeah.
One thing that's obviously different to me, by the way, is the use of Rust versus Java.
Yeah. So there are a couple of similar projects in Eclipse ecosystem. You mentioned Cura, but Cura is more like a gateway technology. But Cura works in a complementation of Eclipse Kapua, which is their cloud implementation. And then you have another stack, which is Eclipse Hono and Ditto, which basically do the same thing. And yeah, so one idea here is that we worked a lot on Eclipse Hono and Eclipse Ditto and learned a lot there. But those projects were always try to do things, provide more like a component that can be reused, and never provided any so to say integrated experience like we wanted. So we in order to have that, we would need to do it on our own. And then we said, let's try to use Rust for a cloud native development and see how it goes. And we were quite more happy with the experience that we had. Basically, with these projects, for example, trying to write a lot of microservices in Java takes a lot of resources because every Java process will be like 250 megs or 500 megs, and then you have try to scale that. It really blows up a lot. And it's not easy to provide. So it's okay if you're trying to provide a cloud scale solution, but we wanted to do something that it will scale to the cloud, but also be able to for people to use on their boxes and.
Okay, so when Drogue does use microservices, are they required to be Kubernetes hosted then? Is that how the problem is approached?
No. So the solution that Rust gives us is that it basically use order of magnitude less RAM than, for example, Java or Go. So I have it somewhere. If you give me a second, I can find you a link in another presentation.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be now. How about if you add it to the notes?
Yeah.
Sometime after the meeting when it's convenient.
So for example, something that is hundreds of meg in Java is maybe a 10 megabyte RAM of Rust service, and then you can see how much that would save if you have a dozen of microservices running there, and you would need it.
Okay, when does Kubernetes come into play here then? Because you mentioned it. Is it only up at the cloud application level?
No,
it's needed, or is it needed at the gateway and the lower level tiers, or is it optional there?
So the whole system is basically running. So all the services that they showed, like a device registry and all these MQTT endpoints, are deployments, Kubernetes deployments.
Okay.
That we are using. But what was also cool using Rust, we were able to create like a server binary. So basically wire up all these microservices without any containers, just wiring it up in pure Rust, connecting to external Kafka, to external Postgres, and I think the Keycloak are the only three components that we are not providing. And having like a very small binary that you can even run on a Raspberry Pi with the same with the same functionality. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. But the target is to run this using a Kubernetes.
Okay, and where does the Kubernetes have to be? Like, is it anticipated this would be up in a cloud, or would it be run closer to the edge if you had to tolerate running permanently or temporarily air-gapped?
Yeah, so we for now we only run it properly in the cloud. We implemented some gateway services that maybe we can talk about at some other point that are running on the local Kubernetes nodes. But in theory, it can run on a single node cluster, like a Microshift or K2S or something like that. The most, as to say, like the most consuming resources in this area are basically a Kafka and the Postgres systems that we need to use to manage the data. All other services are negligible in resource consumption.
Okay, thanks. I think we better call this to an end just to give the other speaker time, but thanks. That was a great presentation. And if maybe you can follow up to some of those questions, just adding links in the notes, it'd be great.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. And this was just a general overview of the system. So maybe for some after the holidays, I can prepare some more concrete demos and show how things work. So if that's okay with the group.
All right. Okay, so Brandon and Amar, I'll let you take over for the agenda item on follow up on the white paper.
Okay, great. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Dejan, for that. Got a few points here that I just wanted to cover off with the group about the paper and how we evolve it. So would welcome a discussion around these points that were shared in the agenda, but some things that came to me top of mind now that we've gone through KubeCon and have gotten some initial feedback around the paper. The idea was to keep it a draft status for a while until we had the chance to collect feedback from the community. So I wanted to ask the group and Kate and Amar specifically about any feedback they've received and any changes that have been made to the paper on GitHub and how close we are to maybe calling this effort done for now, and as we think about where to evolve it in the future.
I'm pulling up the presentation feedback now, but CNCF hasn't released to us the feedback that they calculate of our session in general. So we don't have any of that feedback, but we did send out that put in that QR code asking people for feedback for the working group and whether they wanted to participate in the white paper. And last I checked our last meeting, we didn't have much, but I'll check that now and see what our latest status is.
That sounds good. And while she's checking that, Amar, have you gotten any particular feedback, and has that been recorded anywhere as far as you know?
No, I have not. Unfortunately, right after the presentation, I had another call. So I didn't actually stay through the informal Q&A where people walk up and talk to you. So I have not received any feedback.
All right, so while Kate pulls that up and shares what we maybe have in terms of feedback now, I guess I can also pose the follow-up question is to, once this feedback's incorporated, if we've reached a point where we can call this effort largely done for now. You know, I think with ongoing projects like this, we have to find a logical stopping point, or at least a milestone where we can say these are our principles. And I don't know if these need to be officially reviewed or blessed by, let's say, the TOC of CNCF or other. I think it's maybe up to us to make a recommendation on, hey, this is our principles document, and from here we're going to do other things with it, maybe with the caveat that it's still living and breathing and can change over time. But just to mark this as a milestone of being done, I think would help us get to those next steps. And if we're unsure about that, maybe we could ask someone like Chris Anacek or other. I have been in touch with the CNCF marketing committee, and they are very open to promoting the work we've done here to date in an appropriate way. We just need to maybe figure out what that appropriate way is. And I didn't want to get too far ahead of ourselves without rounding back to the group and making sure that we're okay with proceeding once we have this feedback incorporated.
So I guess first of all, for the feedback, we only have 6 responses from our QR code that we put out for the presentation. And the one that really pertains to the paper is that we asked what edge principles interest you the most. And I'll paste it into the notes after this, but essentially infrastructure and platform management is what people are most interested in, followed by application management at scale. So the idea of management at scale, that broader theme, is the one that people are most interested in, which makes sense because we come from a Kubernetes community. So it makes sense that is where people are drawing interest. External device connectivity is third place, which pairs in well with the presentation Dejan just gave. So how do we connect with those IoT devices that are around your platform or your scale infrastructure? So I'll share that, but it's only 6 responses, so I don't think we can make large conclusions from that. But I think we can keep promoting this survey, which is what we have been doing. So every announcement, we're kind of tagging it to it. So I think we can continue along those lines, but I don't think that's giving us any feedback on the paper itself. I'm curious about, Brandon, you mentioned you talked to the CNCF marketing folks. Did they give any qualifications of like what format it needs to be in to be marketable? So right now we're that GitHub page, but does it need to be some other type of publication to be something we would market?
Yeah, that's a good question. In its current, the first step is just going to be to acknowledge that this paper was created, and they're going to talk about it on the next marketing committee meeting a week from today, just as a win of something that the community has achieved. But that's just internal to really that marketing committee. Other options for us after that point are promotions within Cube Weekly, which is a newsletter. Adding it to the CNCF blog is an option. And then also CNCF, I think, activities going forward as appropriate. I asked about format, and they didn't respond yet to that particular point, but I can bring that up on the next call and inquire as to what might be optimal there. From my personal perspective, it's probably easier to share this more broadly and in a more consumable way if it's in some form of a PDF, whether that's CNCF branded or other. But I can raise that question in particular with them and see what they might recommend. I think if we recognize within a PDF that this is a document that's derived from the GitHub repo, and we link to that, and we also mention, put in the date and say this is the draft as of this date, then I think that might cover us from the sense of being open to potential changes sometimes down the road. But I think if we are able to achieve a PDF, that would help us reach a broader audience and get more eyeballs on the principles than we otherwise would have. But if that somehow turns problematic, I think we could divert to just using the GitHub URL instead. But it would be interesting to see where that lands.
So it sounds like we have through CNCF marketing at least one avenue for promoting it. And the question becomes, are we ready to promote it? And so regardless of whether we put it in a PDF form or it stays on GitHub, we do need to decide, is this done? And we can still add that word of revisable to it, or first edition, or whatever words we want to add to it. But the question is the text in a place we want? And from my personal opinion, I don't think we've had anyone who identifies as an editor come through and read it head to toe and say, this flows, I understand this, I've never looked at this before, and it makes sense. And I think having someone do one or two, or, you know, always more the merrier, do that would provide a lot more context to that.
Yeah, so I was thinking if we could maybe get a clean version in Google Docs. Again, I think maybe easier to collaborate. Then maybe Brandon, you could take a first cut at it, playing the editor role.
I certainly could be one of the editors. Happy to have other community members participate as well. You know, I did give some input during the creation of the doc, certainly, but yeah, if we've got license now to do a final review and have a, hey, last chance to make this as good as it can be for now, I'd be happy to read through it again with that lens and make suggestions in a Google Doc so they're tracked and y'all can see what they are and see if you agree.
Yeah, and I'm thinking maybe we could, at least for this group, lay out the parameters that it's mostly a proofreading, sort of a writing, editing exercise, maybe some minimal content here and there, but no, we're not anticipating any fundamental structural change or content change.
Just throwing an idea out there, but another opportunity to get feedback might be to run it by somebody in the press, like say Alex Williams of the New Stack, to see if he can take a read and tell us honest opinion. Is this ready for promotion, or, you know, is it more like a draft where we should wait for the second edition? Somebody like that is probably in a great position to give us a good review, because the fact is the people who worked on it sort of have, you know, inherent bias. So we can't judge our own work, maybe.
Similarly, we could see if the New Stack has put out something like this before. I don't know if they tend to promote working group progress. Alex Williams is I guess the creator of the New Stack, and so we could see if they've done similar promotions of other working groups or tags and see what that looked like comparatively. I could look that up on the side, but yeah, I think reaching out to him is great. I don't know. I guess the first KubeCon wave might be over, so he might be more available. But that would be a definitely an interesting opinion to have.
Okay, I'll track him down and ask him, unless one of you wants to do it.
It's a great idea.
That'd be great. And if you want to connect me with that email, Stephen, feel free. My main contact at New Stack, Libby Clark, I see is no longer there. So I'd be happy to get feedback from Alex.
Okay, if this item is over, I did drop another note in the agenda on whether we should consider canceling upcoming meetings during the holidays. So there's a link in the agenda notes. I put it in the chat for those who joined it. maybe if you joined late, you didn't see it, but I took a brief glance. The poll is public, so as soon as you vote, you can see the results, and it's leaning towards cancellation of the one on December 28th, and the others look like they're leaning towards keep the meetings on. The other period I put up for vote is in late January. The Lunar New Year is a big thing in Asia, so often people take a week off of work during that period. Now, since we canceled the APAC meeting cycle, maybe this is simply an issue of those people aren't attending meetings anyway because the time is inconvenient, but we'll at least put it out for a poll because it's the right way to do it rather than autocratically deciding on our own.
Thanks for setting up the poll, Steve.
Yeah, I've responded to it. Thank you.
Ben?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, another longer range thing coming up, I think, for next year. But when we, just to refresh people's memory, when we got done with the white paper, we had this idea of perhaps moving on to doing a project under the auspices of this working group of doing a edge native landscape of the open source and even commercial projects that relate to the edge native space. You know, already the CNCF does the cloud native landscape, which has been phenomenally useful and popular. And during a meeting earlier in the year, I dropped a spreadsheet. I think you can find it somewhere deep down in the agenda notes for people to list their projects. And I think there might be over 50 of them in there now in that spreadsheet. It's been one of the things I'll complain about is that I gated access to that document by membership in this group. But I think I've had at least 20 people who didn't join the group or logged in under a different ID than the one they used to join the group to get access to the document. And it's kind of a nuisance to keep granting those manually. So if somebody's just newly discovering it, please, you have edit authority using your group membership. But I think next year, maybe we'll try to expand on that. I know that it sounds like if we've got 25 or 50, that's a lot, but I believe that in terms of IoT projects, the Eclipse Foundation has close to 100 just on their own. So this is just a fraction of the ones out there.
Is this different from the spreadsheet that we link in the Edge native application principles white paper, this one?
I don't know if it is or not.
Do you mind
it
sharing
is a
the spreadsheet
spreadsheet
you're talking about?
Let's see.
Because it might be good, regardless that pointed out that we have two spreadsheets for tracking projects.
Yeah, I don't know
and
whether we have two
consolidate.
or not. Let me see. I'll click on the link he put in the chat. No, I think that's the same one.
Oh, okay. Just making sure. Cool. Good to
But like
know.
I say, I think the real size of this, if it was complete, would be at least 10x larger.
Mhm.
We may have to have people spend some time to just go, I think we can't expect that all the projects out there have even heard of this spreadsheet. So really what we might have to do is get some volunteers to go there and spend a few hours to go collect things. And frankly, I think there's a lot of projects out there that are sort of, you know, the way open source projects go. Sometimes they have their moment in the sun and then just kind of have people lose interest in it. Yet there's still value in listing them because people might want to have a comprehensive place to go get everything that's out there and decide for themselves whether some projects are more healthy than others. And even projects that go unhealthy sometimes did work that, given that they're open source, is worthy of just doing a cut and paste to move them on into whatever, you know, whatever the successor project is. Anyway, just throwing that out there for an activity for next year. I don't expect it's you know, that at least I don't have time to put a lot of effort into carrying this over dramatically in the next month. But let's put that in the queue for next year.
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
That does sound good. I think the sheet is a useful collection, especially if we feel it's more or less complete and give the industry a chance to add their names to it.
Yeah, I
then-
think it shouldn't survive as a sheet. I mean, ultimately, it should be something under GitHub and some kind of governance like the CNCF cloud native landscape is, but you got to start somewhere
Yeah,
in order to compose, the proper form. So let's view this more like the Google Doc that's maybe a little more suitable to comment and change than,
mhm.
the going to the formalization of a GitHub. It's just a starting point.
Yeah, that's great. I was going to ask what you foresaw as evolution through GitHub and then to potentially its own landscape. The CNCF landscape is a monster, as you know. It'd be hard to add anything else to that, but maybe we could make the case for a separate landscape around this to get kicked
Even
off
that
with
is something I think
support.
we'd have to take up to the TOC. We
Mm.
can't unilaterally make that decision, but in my
Mm.
mind, one question they should ask is, why can't it be part of the landscape? But it's almost like that thing got out of hand and it's too big. So that if your focus was specifically edge native,
Mhm.
having a separate edge native focused place to go does have some utility. That would be my position. And certainly you will have projects that are in both of those landscapes, but I don't
Mhm.
have a problem with that.
I actually think there is a chance that we could be added to the standard CNCF landscape. The CNCF added the WASM landscape only in January. So they
Mhm.
basically, if you go to landscape, you can click the WASM tab. And so you have a whole separate tab. And I don't know where that decision was made. But this is the GitHub issue where it is added. And so you would, that's one place
Okay.
to at least start a question would be to put in an issue into the CNCF/landscape repo asking about an edge landscape. And that would be a
Mm.
starting point for a conversation around that, I'd imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
that's
position would
good
be,
point.
let's wait until we get at least a list that we think is at least a third of the things out there before we go that direction. Because until we have stuff to put in the landscape, I don't think we want to go plan it out. Just the act of collecting this will maybe help us categorize this, because I think one of the issues here is that once we get this list, we're going to find out that each of these projects takes on a different mission. Some of them might be 2 attempts to do the same thing, but let's get a decent size sampling
Mhm.
and then make that evaluation.
Yeah, and as we get further, we can plot what the landscape might look like. We need categories both on the X and Y axis. We'll put the project logos, and then there's a question of if we put company logos onto there as
Yeah.
well. And then the actual building will take a while because I know you need SVG logos of everything, and the company logo records are at least pulled out of Crunchbase. So you have to ensure that every participating company has an up-to-date Crunchbase record.
Yeah. Okay, we're nearing the end of the hour. It tentatively, based on that poll, it looks like we'll have a meeting in 2 weeks. So if anybody's got any agenda item ideas or something, go ahead and edit them into the document, because we could have just a random birds of a feather meeting, but if somebody has got something they'd like to see presented, let throw that idea in there. Okay, last call. Anybody else got something they want to discuss at this meeting? If
I just had a quick question to finish out the agenda for Amar and Brandon. I was curious, that last bullet, how perhaps to make principles of the paper more tangible. I just want to make sure I understood what you all were suggesting there, slash actionable in the future. What is an example of one of those things you were thinking there?
Yeah, so the first thought there was if we call the paper more or less done for now sometime soon, what kind of follow-ups we could create that builds upon this in a relative and valuable way. And we talked in the past about maybe focusing in on a particular use case or zeroing in on the practical application of these principles in some way in order to increase the learning and grow from there. I did mention a blog post from a colleague, a former colleague of mine, Frank Brockner's, who's very much in the space too. And he's at Cisco. They're doing some neat things around a project called Great Bear. I just thought we would have an open discussion around maybe where we could go from here. And that's about all I had for now.
That makes sense. That same presentation, it looks like, looking at the decks, they gave at KubeCon as well. So that was really good. I really enjoyed it and found it very interesting and liked how they, the 12-factor app, they kind of use that as their framework. So I thought that was a really good presentation as well. So yeah, highly recommend looking at the slides. Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure I understood what you all were getting at there before we closed out.
Yeah, that's all I had. But maybe if we add this to the agenda for a future call, everyone just can do a little thinking about what is the best next step for this paper and how we continue to show utility.
One final thing I'll add before we close, the Scale conference that I'm an organizer of is held in Los Angeles in March. It's actually Pasadena rather than Los Angeles, but it does have CFPs open till the end of the week. It has a 2-day track that is being designated as a Kubernetes Community Day that covers cloud native talks. And it also has an IoT track. So if anybody wants to attend or present, that's still open till the end of the week. And I put a link to the CFP site in the chat.
Thank you.
So last call then. So, okay, thanks everybody for attending, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
folks.